Okay, I think we're live, which is great. Let me make sure I've got the chat connected, and it looks like it's connected on my end. Sorry, last week I forgot to do that. But we're all set up. So today we're going to be talking about what actually is a healthy relationship so you can sort of know if you're on the right track. And if you have questions as we go, feel free to add them. You can comment here and I will be able to see them and respond to them. I'll also have some time at the very end for some Q&A. Okay, so so what is a healthy relationship? Because I think there sometimes is a misconception that healthy somehow is perfect. And of course, I know we would all say, of course it isn't perfect. There's a way that our logic brains can say, of course there is no perfect relationship. But still when couples come in, they often have still like a picture in their mind of how things should be. And so I guess I'm just reiterating it that healthy relationships do still have struggles. And the difference is not that there is an absence of conflict, but that when there is conflict, they have the ability to find each other again. That when there is a moment of disconnection, there is a way to get reconnected. That really, to me, is one of the biggest signs of a healthy relationship. And so today I'm going to share about 5 signs that I look for as an EFT therapist when a couple is moving towards feeling more secure together, feeling safe together, even if life is still really messy. I work with a lot of military and veteran couples. And with military life, life can be very messy, very complex, complicated, all sorts of moving pieces. And we can still be a healthy relationship as long as we know how to find each other again. So that's a little bit what we'll be talking about. One of the first things that I wanted to talk about is that, there's the outside and the inside. Oftentimes people are judging the relationship from the outside. So, for example, on the outside, a relationship can look really good, and this is also part of what happens when we compare ourselves to other relationships. Um, Oftentimes, this happens with parents, like thinking about, well, my parents never fought. I never saw my parents fight. And so the fact that we're having a lot of conflict, that must mean something is wrong. We often compare how our relationship feels to what we see on the outside for other people. But the outside and the inside are very, very different things. And so even when relationships look calm on the outside, they can still feel really lonely. I'll say that every couple experiences life stressors. They experience stress, whether that's career, work related stress, parenting stress, the stress of just like the chores and the budgeting and just the life things are stressful. Every couple experiences misunderstandings where they think that they're even being clear. They think they're communicating really well, and somehow just in the talking, they miss each other. Every couple experiences emotional injuries. So hurt feelings is another way to talk about this. So everyone steps on each other's toes, and they do things that hurt us emotionally, oftentimes without ever meaning to, but they do something that hurts. Every couple also experiences transitions, which can be really stressful, whether that's moving, whether that is living together for the first time, parenting together for the first time, transitions with kids leaving home as they grow up and they leave the house, transitions with ending jobs and starting new jobs, or moving from one place to another place. There are so many transitions, and that is a stressful thing. Every couple deals with that. Every couple also just deals with exhaustion. And so again, um, you know, these are things that you might not see on the outside. Like when you're looking at your parents, or you're looking at your friend's relationship, or your pastor's relationship, or something like that. Um, on the outside, it might look really calm, but they are still going through all of these same challenges. These are challenges that come with life and with living in relationship with another human being. And so again, successful couples aren't somehow conflict free, and they may look very successful on the outside but not be as successful behind closed doors. The ones that truly are successful, they become more skilled at repairing after conflict. So, or just maybe it's not even a conflict, but somehow they feel disconnected from each other and they know how to reconnect. And this is a much healthier standard to have for your relationship. So I would want you to be like taking away from this, or thinking about, what's our standard for health, for how we know if we're doing good. And I would love it if you had this standard of like, can we repair when things happen? That would be a great standard. It's much better than just comparing yourself to other people who maybe are showing a picture perfect version of the relationship on the outside. Okay. So it's not, do we struggle? It's not a problem that we are struggling. What the goal is to switch to is what happens after we struggle. Are we able to reconnect? Okay. I think also another way that sometimes people are measuring whether or not they're healthy is by how frequently they are arguing or having conflict. But conflict isn't necessarily the best measure of success. Like couples who hardly ever fight, that can also mean that they are withdrawing, that they are sweeping things under the rug, that they are not actually working through something. Or maybe one person is kind of appeasing or people pleasing in the relationship. They just kind of give in to what their partner wants, which might work in the short term to prevent conflict, but then makes the relationship really unsatisfying over time if somebody just keeps on people pleasing in the relationship. So just having like low levels of conflict, that's not really a good measure for success in health. And so this kind of set of couples, they argue very rarely because somebody is withdrawn in the relationship. Sometimes both of the partners are emotionally withdrawn, and by withdrawn I mean there's a few different ways to think about withdrawing. I can kind of shut down. But I can also just not be bringing my full self to the relationship. I'm not bringing my opinions and like in the case of people pleasing, if I am just going with what you want, this is also a way of withdrawing. It's different than shutting down, but I'm not bringing my full self to the relationship with my opinions and my likes and my dislikes and us like co-creating our life together. So for example, just over this past weekend, I was staying with a couple, and whenever like some friends of ours, and they were friends of my husband's, so I didn't know them very well, and I was getting to know them, and I always like to ask about how they met and how they fell in love, and that's like, so nice to hear about as a couples therapist. And they were telling me about, how they got to decorate their place together. They had been long distance, and when they moved in together, they got to get all new furniture and pick it out together and set it up together. Well, in a couple where there is people pleasing tendencies going on, then maybe one person says, "Oh, I want this couch," and the other one who's people pleasing says, "Yeah, let's just if you like it, I'm fine with it. Let's get what you want." But then if they do that over and over to avoid conflict, they're also not bringing them their full selves to the relationship. Um, okay, so I kind of went down a whole rabbit hole with that. I was just trying to say there are multiple ways to be emotionally withdrawn, and sometimes a lack of conflict is actually people withdrawing and not really being their full selves in relationships. Other couples argue more often, um, and they do struggle with how to repair afterwards. But really successful, healthy couples, they argue and yet they can remain connected even in the argument, and they know how to repair afterwards if they do get disconnected. And this is a rather advanced skill set to say, how can we argue and how can we have conflict and disagree and still stay connected even during the argument? Very advanced, probably even more advanced than there's can we have conflict and repair afterwards? That is huge success. And then even higher level is, can we stay connected in the midst of the conflict? And one of the things that helps people do this is something called emotional accessibility. And this is when I can stay connected and aware of my emotions. I have my kind of some emotional awareness to know what's going on with me in that moment. Because I'm also aware of my emotions, I'm able to stay present with my partner's emotions, and we're with both people's emotions simultaneously. And so this is actually a much stronger marker for success and health in relationships than how frequently you're having conflict, because healthy couples learn to notice sort of when the conflict starts, or sometimes we call this a cycle or a spiral, when that cycle takes over, and then they work together against it. And so if you have been following me at all, then you know that I talk a lot about cycles, sometimes called spirals or relationship patterns. It doesn't really matter what word you use for it. But this is when we have a consistent pattern of disconnection that happens over and over and over again, regardless of the topic. It could change from money to sex to kids to in-laws to work schedules, you name it, but it goes kind of the exact same way each time. That's a cycle of disconnection, or a spiral that leads you both to being disconnected. So healthy couples know how to notice this cycle, pause it, work together against it, and then repair afterwards. And then really advanced ones know how to stay connected even in a disagreement. Okay, next slide. Yeah, and so healthy doesn't mean that you always have to be connected. That is also just not a realistic standard. It's not possible to want to be connected 100% of the time. And again, I am thinking a lot of people who are listening right now, you probably at one level in your logic brain can say, "Oh, of course nobody can be connected 100% of the time." But at an emotional level, many times people really want to be, and they get scared when they're not connected 100% of the time. So this is maybe just me trying to provide a little bit of reassurance that even close relationships, they move through moments of connection and disconnection. This is normal to flow in and out. The important thing is you know how to get back to connection. So I'm also thinking about the Gottmans doctors John and Julie Gottman, who do a lot of research on couples. They have their own type of couple therapy called the Gottman method, which is very popular, even though we do EFT at Communicate and Connect Counseling. The Gottman method has a lot of good stuff in it too. And one of the things that they always come back to in their research is the importance of repairing, is that that it matters the most that you can repair. And so healthy relationships really are more defined by the ability to repair after disconnection versus avoiding ruptures. And sometimes I hear this with couples in my office. They go, "Well, now you know this is a trigger for me. So you know this trigger, you should never do it." But that is not possible. That is not possible. So for example, I like to think about relationships kind of like dancing. If you know, I love dancing. My husband and I met through dancing. So sometimes I have got more dancing metaphors. But if we're dancing together, we're living life together and we're in this flow state and we're moving through life together, we're gonna step on each other's toes. And certainly, yes, we can get better at dancing. We can get better at not stepping on each other's toes. But it kind of comes with the territory of dancing together. Like if I want to dance together, I got to know that every now and then we're going to step on each other's toes. And when the focus becomes, don't step on my toes, don't do anything that triggers me, then at some point we can't dance anymore. We have no way to move together. And so reconnecting and repairing is really important. So you can also think of it as kind of a flow process. We're gonna have moments of connection, and then we'll have moments of disconnection, and then we'll have moments of repairing, and that makes us stronger. That makes us stronger when we can go in and out of this flow, kind of like waves on the ocean. We move from one to the next, back to connection, and there's disconnection, and we move back to connection, and we've repaired and are connected, and we might have a flow of disconnection, connection. This ability to flow back into connection and back into repair is what makes us stronger over time, because then we build trust in the relationship, knowing that we are going to flow back and that we can flow back and we know how to come back to the connection. Okay, so one of the signs is that emotional safety exists. So it doesn't necessarily mean that every single conversation you have feels comfortable, because to be successful in these conversations, I actually have to be very vulnerable. I have to share my feelings. I have to be willing to make mistakes. I need to be willing to admit when I'm wrong, which, oh my gosh, that's a vulnerable thing. So many people come into my office because neither of them wants to be in the wrong. Neither wants to be in the wrong, and it's very hard to admit, like, oh, I kind of did something that was wrong here, or that wasn't perfect, was somehow, didn't go as well as I wanted it to go. I might also need to ask for comfort from my partner, and that is a very vulnerable thing as well. So these are vulnerable things to do, and they are exactly what's needed to have conversations that lead to connection. And in order to also have these conversations, I have to have emotional safety. They kind of create a reciprocal relationship. Like, the more safe I feel, the more I can be vulnerable and then have conversations that lead us back to repair and connection. And the more I'm vulnerable, the more I can have these conversations. And then that leads to more emotional safety. That leads to the building of trust. So that way I can go back and have this conversation again later. The next time it becomes easier the next time after I felt safe doing it in the past. So ultimately, the relationship ends up feeling safe enough to keep trying. And so this is something that you can think about. When something difficult happens with you and your partner, do you feel safe bringing it to your partner? Do you feel not just safe talking about it, but do you feel like you can be vulnerable to share your feelings? Can you be vulnerable and safe to be imperfect and admit when you made a mistake or when you were in the wrong? Do you feel safe enough to ask your partner for comfort? These are great questions to ask yourself to help you know, like, where are we? Do we have that ability um, to flow back into connection, or do we have a lot of hangups and blocks to emotional safety and sharing vulnerably and doing that to move back towards connection? Okay. So another sign that you are, in a good spot, this healthy, is that conflict actually leads to more understanding. So, I said before that healthy couples don't just avoid disagreements. They actually become curious. As we're talking, can I be curious about what's going on for my partner or what's happening between us? So dropping the who's right and who's wrong, but what just happened between us? And can we figure that out together so that way we can find a way to come back to connection? Because often underneath moments, again, I'm thinking about the outside versus the inside. So conflict, of course, there are millions of different variations, but I'm just going to go very general right now. Like on the outside, maybe I'm showing a lot of anger. But if we can stop and get curious and figure out what's underneath the anger, oftentimes there's more. Oftentimes it's not just anger, there's more feelings there, like fear or loneliness or feeling like my feelings are hurt. And there's like a longing to feel close to you, or there's some sort of disappointment. There's just usually so much more going on the inside compared to what is visible on the outside. And that's part of what we want to get curious about, is we want to understand the more vulnerable emotions on the inside that's happening both for ourselves but also for our partners. And when we understand that, that is like a doorway. That's a doorway that makes repair much more possible with my partner. Yeah. So when we do this, the conflict actually leads to more understanding versus more confusion. So you can sort of think about when we are in conflict together, do we end up feeling more confused and totally lost and like we don't understand each other at the end? Okay, that would be a sign we're not in the health zone. Versus when we have conflict, does it lead to clarity and understanding, that more understanding between us? If so, then that's a pretty good sign. Okay. So just here, I'm going to go over 3 more signs that are relevant to help you understand, whether you are in the health zone, maybe. Okay, so sign number 3 is influence. So healthy couples can let the other person impact their perspective. So this also often comes from the research by the Gottmans at the Gottman Institute. It's can I allow myself to hear your opinion? Can I allow myself to have a change of opinion, to go with what you think in a situation? Can I have some ability to say, like, my way of looking at it isn't the only way to look at it, and that you're looking at it differently, and that is a valid choice. How you're looking at it is completely valid. How I'm looking at it is valid, and there may be also other ways to look at it. So all of this would be allowing you to influence the other partner. So if I can't ever influence my partner, or if my partner can't ever influence me, and we're just like kind of like rigid and stuck, I guess the image that just came to my mind is like an old cantankerous man with like a cane or something, like a grumpy old man who's like, get off my porch or something. Like that's the picture that I had in my head. Like if we're really saying like, no, I'm never gonna go with what you think, the way you think is just always wrong, then that's not going to get us anywhere. So am I willing to accept my partner's influence, see what they have to say, and really consider their perspective? Okay, sign number 4 is that you actually do repair, that the repair happens, that you notice when you're hurt and own it and talk to your partner about it and try to get repair. Also, that you notice when your partner is hurt. Own that even if you didn't intend for the hurt to happen, the hurt is happening by stepping on their toes, even if you never intended to step on their toes. And then trying again, that we try again to dance together. We try again to be connected. So that might, basically notice the hurt, own it, talk about it with each other, apologize if needed, and then we reconnect and we come back together and try again. Okay. And then sign number 5 is that you keep choosing each other. It's that you have commitment to being connected with each other, even through hard seasons. And like we work with a lot of military couples, and there are a lot of hard seasons with the military. We work with other couples too, and just, civilian couples have a lot of hard seasons as well, but especially with military life, there are a lot of hard seasons with deployments and moving and readjusting to new places, and there are just many. And one of the signs that you are doing really well as a couple is that you clearly keep choosing each other. There is the commitment to keep choosing each other. And that sort of feeling really good and secure with each other comes from thousands of small moments where we're choosing each other and where we're saying, I'm still here. I want to be here. I'm in this with you. And doing that over and over and over. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So I like to give some examples just to try to help make it more applicable, like easier to digest sometimes. So let's just imagine we have Sarah and James, and they are arguing about chores. There's so many times, just side note here, so many times that couples come into my office and they say, it started over nothing. It started about the socks on the floor. It was like no big deal. It wasn't even a big thing. And it just exploded. This is such a common thing. So let's say that they're arguing about chores, and on the surface, right? The outside versus the inside. On the outside, on the surface, you never help. That's maybe what Sarah says. You never help around the house. You're not helping with the chores. It's always on me. And then James maybe gets defensive and he's saying, like, you're always so critical. No matter what I do, it's never enough for you. Okay, that's because they're focused on the outside. They haven't gone underneath. They haven't gone to the inside to figure out what's underneath. So underneath, Sarah feels really alone. And James feels like he can never get it right, feels like he's failing her. Once they can start talking about this, like when Sarah can feeling really alone, I miss you, I want to feel connected, like we're a team handling all of this, that starts changing things. That takes a lot of vulnerability and bravery to say something like that. And then when James can say, I'm also getting triggered. I feel like I'm just failing you, and that's so hard because you're the one person whose opinion means everything to me. And so that's why I'm getting defensive, because I don't want to fail you. That automatically, like, we can start connecting in that place of vulnerability and talking about what's underneath and on the inside. And once we're connected, then we can problem solve about whatever needs to be problem solved. When we know we're on the same team, then we can figure out if we need a chore chart. But this is one of the mistakes that many couples make, is they go right into problem solving the chore chart and the chore schedule and who's going to do what and who's responsible for what, but they never first get to the underlying problem, which is how do we make sure we feel like we're on the same team. So the problem we always want to solve first is the feeling of disconnection. We want to first be on the same team. Then from the place of being on the same team, then we can problem solve whatever is the thing in regular life that needs to be addressed. Okay, so if I condensed all of these 5 signs that you're in a healthy relationship down to one sentence, it would be: you can be imperfect and still be healthy and still feel secure with your partner. Healthy relationships aren't built by avoiding conflict or disconnection. They are built by repeatedly having this pattern of reconnecting and repairing and reconnecting after moments of disconnection or conflict. So, when we are doing this, we become more accessible to our partner, more responsive and engaged. And these are really important for that feeling of emotional safety, that feeling like we're a team. And so if you are taking one thing from today, I'm hoping that you are taking that healthy relationships are not built by avoiding disconnection. So often people are trying to avoid disconnection, but healthy relationships are not built by avoiding disconnection. They're built by repairing after disconnection and knowing how to do that and get reconnected. Okay, so we have a free relationship pattern assessment. This is something that I created because we have our spiral to team process. It's the process that we take couples through, and we have a way to take families and individuals through as well. But it's kind of like the framework. And the very first step to changing anything is first recognizing the pattern that I'm stuck in. And so we have this free relationship pattern assessment that is here. You can scan the QR code. It's also linked in the description. And that will help you identify kind of the spiral or the reoccurring cycle they're stuck in, start ending what's happening underneath those moments of disconnection or conflict, and then start choosing, maybe the next steps towards connection and reconnecting again. So that's there for you. And if you found this helpful, it would be so helpful if you could leave a Google review. We don't ever ask our counseling clients to leave Google reviews just because we are protecting their confidentiality. And so when you leave a Google review for any of our free resources or free workshops that we do, that's really helpful to give other couples kind of an idea of what they could expect to experience and get out of our process, which is our spiral to team process. Okay, so now I have a little bit of time for um, some Q&A. And, if you just feel like commenting, I would also love to know, like, what sign, um, of these 5 signs of a healthy relationship, like, what would be the biggest difference if you could have that in your relationship right now? What do you think would make the biggest difference? Um, Sometimes people would say, like, maybe less frequent arguments or more time to repair. Some people sometimes tell me, like, just if we could be more emotionally open or if we could rebuild trust. So, yeah, so let me know. I'm very curious what it is for you. Yeah. And yeah, and if you're watching this later, you can also leave a comment if you want, because I'd love to know, what would it be for you? What would make the biggest difference to feeling like you had emotional safety, that you were feeling like, oh, we do have this health in our relationship that allows us to flow back into repair and reconnection when we get disconnected. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions come in, so I'll go ahead and end us here. And again, there won't be a live next week due to the Labor Day holiday, and then the week after that, I'll have our staff meeting, but we'll have 2 other ones later in September. Okay, thank you all who joined and who are watching this, and I really hope this helped. And if you have any topics or ideas that you would like us to cover, either on the podcast or on a live training like this, please feel free to reach out and let us know. All right, until next time.